The hills of the Angami land lay bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon, their rolling expanse echoing with the songs of birds and the rustling of ancient trees. A narrow river wound its way through the valley, its waters catching the last embers of the setting sun. It was here, on the banks of this river, that Tsoyu first saw Terwapadu. She stood at the edge of the water, her hands cupped to catch its coolness, her long dark hair spilling over her shoulders like silk. Tsoyu had seen many maidens in his village, but something about her presence held him still. She was a vision of quiet grace, the embodiment of a song left unfinished. The village of Konoma was alive with preparations for the harvest festival, a time of feasting, dance, and whispered promises beneath the star-strewn sky. Tsoyu, a young hunter known for his swiftness and skill, moved through the crowd with an easy confidence. Yet, even among the revelry, his thoughts remained with the girl by the river. When he finally saw her again, the festival torches casting flickering patterns on her face, he felt an inexplicable pull, as though the fates had conspired to weave their stories together. Terwapadu's laughter rang like chimes caught in the wind as she danced in the circle of young women, their feet keeping time with the rhythmic beat of the village drums. Tsoyu watched from the edges, his heart drumming in unison. When the time came for the men to join, he stepped forward, his eyes seeking hers. She met his gaze, a flicker of recognition passing between them. They danced, their movements cautious at first, then bolder, their hands brushing briefly before parting. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, something fragile yet undeniable. In the days that followed, their paths crossed again and again. By the river, where Terwapadu washed fruits in the clear water, Tsoyu would pause from his hunting trips, his presence lingering just long enough for their conversations to stretch into the fading light. They spoke of simple things at first, the changing seasons, the whisper of the trees, the stories woven into the land. Then their words turned softer, more personal. Tsoyu spoke of his dreams of becoming a warrior who would protect his people, while Terwapadu shared her love for the songs her grandmother sang, the kind that told of lost loves and eternal devotion. Their connection deepened with every word, every glance, every stolen moment. One evening, as the sky bloomed into shades of violet and gold, Tsoyu presented Terwapadu with a small wooden pendant, carved in the shape of a leaf. "It is from the tree that stands at the edge of the river," he said. "So it will always remind you of this place." Terwapadu held it delicately, tracing the fine lines with her fingertips. "And of you," she added softly. Tsoyu felt the weight of her words settle deep within him, a promise unspoken yet understood. But the world beyond their stolen moments was not as kind. Terwapadu's father, a man of rigid traditions, had already decided her fate. She was to be wed to a warrior from a neighboring clan, a match arranged to strengthen alliances, to uphold honor. When whispers of her meetings with Tsoyu reached his ears, his disapproval was swift and unyielding. He forbade her from seeing the hunter, his voice cold with finality. Terwapadu's protests fell on deaf ears. She pleaded, swearing that her heart belonged to Tsoyu, but her father's will was iron. He reminded her of duty, of the weight of family honor, of the shame love could bring when it defied custom. And so, she was kept within the confines of their home, her days stretching long, her heart aching for the boy with the quiet smile and the fierce eyes who had once danced with her beneath the stars. Tsoyu too felt the sharp sting of separation. He wandered the forests restlessly, his hunts turning reckless, his thoughts clouded with longing. He knew the path ahead was steep with obstacles, yet he could not bring himself to let go. When he finally caught sight of Terwapadu again, standing by the doorway of her home, her eyes seeking him even as her feet remained rooted, he knew their love was far from over. The river continued its eternal course, the trees whispered their ancient secrets, and the wind carried the echoes of a love unfinished. Under a pallid dawn, Tsoyu's resolve hardened as he stepped toward the imposing dwelling that held Terwapadu's fate. Every step resonated with a quiet defiance against the unyielding traditions that bound them, and though his heart pounded with both hope and trepidation, he could not suppress the desire to challenge the decree that separated them. In the cool light of morning, he found himself before the stern countenance of Tawapada's father, a man whose unbending adherence to ancestral customs had long dictated the rhythm of village life. With words both earnest and measured, Tsoyu pleaded for a chance to prove that his love was not a fleeting dalliance but a commitment to honor and protect the one who had ignited his soul. Yet, his pleas fell on ears encased in implacable tradition, and the elder's verdict was as cold and immovable as the mountain stones, a firm denial that severed any possibility of union in the open light. Even as the bitter taste of rejection lingered, the clandestine meetings beneath whispering trees continued to kindle hope. In the secret refuge of twilight, Tsoyu and Tawapadu would steal away to a hidden glen where moonlight wove silver threads through the foliage. Their conversations, laden with dreams and quiet rebellions, transformed the night into a tapestry of promises and shared confidences. Tawapadu's eyes, luminous with both sorrow and determination, betrayed the inner turmoil wrought by a destiny not of her own choosing. Every whispered word between them became a defiant act, a promise that, no matter how harsh the world outside, their hearts would continue to beat in unison. Emboldened by their fervent exchanges, the lovers crafted a daring plan to escape the constraints that threatened to tear them apart. On a night when the moon hung low and luminous, casting elongated shadows among ancient trees, they met in the secluded expanse of a forest clearing. The air was charged with both anticipation and an inescapable foreboding, each soft murmur of the wind echoing the cadence of their secret vows. There, in the heart of the wilderness, they vowed to defy the inexorable pull of fate, promising to forsake the gilded cages of tradition in favor of a future sculpted by their own desires. Every word exchanged was a promise, every shared glance a pact to endure whatever trials lay ahead. Yet fate, as it often does, harbored its own designs, cruel and unforeseen. As the lovers prepared to embark on their precarious escape, a shadow crept into the periphery of their clandestine meeting, a presence born of envy and whispered spite. A rival, whose heart harbored a poisonous mixture of jealousy and resentment, had overheard their plans and, driven by his own dark ambitions, betrayed their secret to the forces that upheld the old order. In the midst of the silence, the sound of hurried footsteps shattered the serenity of the night, and the gentle rustling of leaves was replaced by the clamor of an oncoming storm. In an instant, the clearing was invaded by figures whose loyalty to tradition and duty left no room for the indulgence of forbidden love. The sudden assault was as swift as it was merciless. Tsoyu, though agile and resolute, found himself overwhelmed by the onslaught of armed villagers whose eyes had hardened with duty and disdain. Each strike that fell upon him was a bitter punctuation to the couple's secret aspirations, a brutal reminder that the forces of the old world would not be so easily defied. As the tide of conflict surged, Tsoyu's struggle became a desperate ballet of hope and despair, his every move an act of defiance against a fate already inscribed in the annals of tradition. Tawapadu, caught in the same cruel web, witnessed the shattering of her dreams with a silent agony. The moment the betrayer's words summoned the wrath of her kin, the home that had once cradled her in warmth transformed into a fortress of control. Her pleas, fervent and tear-stained, echoed against unyielding walls, a stark counterpoint to the fervor of her heart. With every forceful step that carried her away from Tsoyu, the future they had dared to imagine crumbled further into despair. The bonds of duty and familial honor, once accepted as the natural order, now reared as insurmountable barriers, sealing her fate in a prison of expectations and sorrow. In the aftermath, the world seemed to pause, a breath held in collective mourning for the love that had dared to challenge the ancient edicts. Tsoyu, his body battered and his spirit scarred, was cast out from the only life he had ever known, banished into the labyrinth of dense, unyielding forest. Each step he took was weighted with the loss of a love that had once burned so brightly, and the wild, indifferent wilderness became both his refuge and his eternal reminder of what had been stolen from him. The cool murmur of the forest, the gentle sway of the trees, and the quiet sigh of the wind all bore witness to the anguish of a heart left in exile. Yet, even as the physical distance grew insurmountable between them, the memory of their shared moments clung to the edges of both their worlds, a spectral bond that neither time nor tyranny could entirely sever. The echo of their whispered vows resonated in every shadow and flicker of moonlight, a silent testament to a love that defied the rigid constructs of their society. In that lingering echo, there was both the sorrow of a dream deferred and the faint, persistent hope that someday, perhaps against all odds, the course of destiny might bend just enough to allow their paths to converge once more. And so, as the night surrendered to the uncertain promise of a new dawn, the lovers were left to navigate the harsh realities imposed upon them. Tsoyu wandering the unforgiving forest with a wounded heart, and Terwapadu, confined within walls that resonated with loss. Their parting, though marked by the cruelty of enforced separation, also planted the seeds of an enduring rebellion, a quiet insistence that the human spirit, even when battered by the weight of tradition, continues to dream of a love that transcends all barriers. In the aftermath of betrayal and exile, Tsoyu wandered the wild lands, each step echoing with the weight of lost promises. The dense forest, once a playground for whispered secrets and tender dreams, now bore silent witness to a solitary figure burdened by grief. With every rustling leaf and each sigh of the wind, memories of Terwapadu stirred in him, a bittersweet reminder of the love that had once promised eternal union. He traced the contours of ancient trees with calloused fingers, as if seeking solace in the rough bark that had silently witnessed their shared vows. Every mark he carved into the wood was a silent litany to her memory, a testament to the hope that even in separation, their hearts remained entwined. Back in the village, the relentless tide of tradition swept Terwapadu into a fate she had never desired. Bound by the unyielding chains of arranged duty, she was forced into a union that stripped her of the vibrant dreams she had nurtured in secret glances and soft-spoken promises. The gentle radiance of her spirit dimmed under the heavy expectations of familial honor, and the home that should have nurtured her blossoming soul transformed into a gilded cage. In the quiet recesses of her new life, she clung to the memory of Tsoyu, the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his gaze, like a fading ember in a vast, cold darkness. Each day, the wooden pendant he had once given her rested against her heart, its delicate form a bittersweet memento of a love that defied the rigid confines of her reality. Yet, the more she tried to revive those tender moments in her thoughts, the deeper the chasm grew between the woman she had been and the fate imposed upon her. The inevitable hour came as softly as a sigh. Terwapadu's light waned under the relentless burden of sorrow. In a quiet, unremarkable moment that belied its profound significance, she slipped away from the world that demanded conformity over passion. Her passing, though shrouded in the muted rituals of tradition, sent ripples of quiet mourning through the village. The whispered elegies and sorrowful songs of the elders carried her name on the wind, transforming her brief, poignant life into a living legend. In that gentle fade into silence, the memory of her vibrant heart refused to be forgotten, casting a lingering glow that even the strictest traditions could not extinguish. When news of her departure reached Tsoyu, the forest seemed to weep with him, its murmurs echoing his anguish. The loss was not merely of a cherished companion but of the future they had so fervently envisioned, a future carved in shared dreams and defiant hope. In the solitude of his exile, the pain crystallized into an unwavering determination to immortalize their love. With each passing season, he etched their story into the very soul of the wilderness, on the gnarled bark of ancient trees, in the delicate patterns of the river's flow, and in the hushed murmur of the night breeze. These subtle marks of remembrance grew into a legend, a silent testimony to a love that had dared to challenge destiny itself. Over time, murmurs of Tsoyu's wandering began to intertwine with the folklore of the land. Some claimed that in his boundless grief, he had transcended the mortal realm, his spirit merging with the forest's eternal essence. Under the pale glow of the moon, a solitary figure was sometimes seen drifting between the shadows of towering trees, a spectral guardian of lost love whose eyes shimmered with both sorrow and defiant hope. To the villagers, his presence became a symbol, an enduring reminder that even when fate wove bitter separations, the ties of the heart could defy the confines of mortal existence. His silent vigil inspired whispers of an unfinished love, a promise that the embers of true passion could, in time, kindle a rebellion against the cruel hand of destiny. In the quiet moments of dusk, as the sky deepened into a canvas of indigo and silver, the legend of Tsoyu and Terwapadu wove itself into the fabric of the land. The gentle rustle of leaves and the soft gurgle of the river carried with them echoes of their shared past, inviting anyone who listened to pause and reflect on the power of a love that refused to die. Their story, though marred by separation and sorrow, endured as a testament to the indomitable human spirit, a spirit that, even when fragmented by the forces of tradition and duty, continues to dream of a reunion beyond the constraints of the earthly realm. And so, beneath the timeless gaze of the stars, the legacy of their unfulfilled love lingered, a quiet rebellion against the inevitable, a reminder that sometimes the most profound truths are those that remain unfinished. In every whisper of the wind and every shimmer of the moonlit river, there was a promise. That love, no matter how deeply wounded, endures beyond the boundaries of time, waiting patiently for the day when destiny might finally yield to the courage of the human heart.